And good morning to you all. Thank you for joining us this uh, beautiful, smoky Saturday out here in Western Colorado. We've got some wildfires all over us here, and I look out the window, and it's nothing but haze and smoke. But other than being clear skies, welcome again. I'm Jim Cressman. I'm going to be your host, as always, and I welcome each and every one of you. Good morning from Western Colorado. With us this morning is accredited claims advocate Kerry Baker from the law firm of Hill and Pontin. I asked Kerry to join us today because there is a a lot of questions and confusions and misunderstanding about our benefits. A lot of these things are buried deep within the maze of the Veterans Administration. Uh, it's hard enough to get our claims, but in addition to our claims, I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of these things. But there are additional benefits that can be achieved, and I asked Kerry to come on and sort of walk us through some of the finer details of those extra benefits. Particularly, we have our claims when we do receive our benefits, we have that claim. But then, in addition to that, there are other items that we can receive from the VA, such as aid in attendance and special monthly compensations, and they sort of overlap and not overlap in some cases. So I asked Kerry to come in and clear that up. Kerry, good morning, and thank you for joining us. You're going to answer every one of our questions with absolute accuracy. I know. Um, but Kerry, why don't we just start with the special monthly compensation, and is that the same as the aid in attendance, and or in addition to? Could you explain to us how that is all put together?
I will do my best. So understand that when we train advocates who are somewhat familiar with this system, it takes them weeks to months to sometimes years, depending on the person, to learn SMC. It is a complicated situation to try to boil down into understandable terms, but it can be done. So the question is, can I do it? Um, Not many people are good across the country with SMC, um, and hopefully I'm one of them. So we'll just dive right into it. So most people, SMC stands for, as Jim said, special monthly compensation. There are multiple levels of special monthly compensation. Aid and attendance is just one of them. So we'll kind of put that on the back burner for the moment. But when do you get special monthly compensation versus just compensation? A good example is if a veteran's rated 100%, they're going to get roughly, with a spouse, roughly $4,000 a month at the 100% rate, whether that's a scheduler 100%, whether that's 100% through unemployability, that's what they're going to get. Most people, in most cases, I should say, that's the maximum you're gonna get in most cases. You guys, most of you are not most cases, okay? Um, a veteran with a severe enough heart condition can get 100%. A severe enough mental health condition can get 100%. Any number of things can get you to 100%, and it has to be fairly severe. But once you start losing use of extremities, especially multiple extremities, or multiple extremities combined with other things, that starts changing everything. So you're going to hear me reference a lot of letters, all right? And to kind of give you a foundation, uh, SMC in the United States Code in Title 38 is under Section 1114. You don't really have to know that. But in each of the subsections, of 1114, there is a letter code, and that code corresponds with an increase in compensation above the 100% rate. And we refer to SMC rates according to that paragraph. Okay. And I'm going to list you all of the letters. All right. And every one of these are above 100% and are a subsection of that particular title in the law. Uh,
Kerry, allow me to interrupt if I may and ask a question just for
yeah.
clarification. The 1148 section of Title 38, is that CFR or USC?
That's USC. It's
Oh,
11,
that is
1114. Yeah,
all right.
1114
Yeah.
United States Code.
Yeah, that's
It
for
yeah,
everybody's that means that it was passed into law by the legislature, by Congress.
and it's got a corresponding regulation to it as well. Um,
Okay.
but those subsections are S as in Sam, L, M, N, O, R1, R2, and now T. Okay. So those are some of the levels of SMC. Each one of those levels indicates a certain dollar figure. Right? It takes a certain type of disability or multiple disabilities to reach one of those levels. Now, I said that's some of them. That's not all of them. What you have broken down further in the regulation and somewhat in the statute, but they're not individual subsections in the statute, are what's called intermediate rates between L and O, and that's L and a half, and it goes to M, M and a half, and it goes to N and a half, and it goes to O. So in total, you have S, L, L and a half, M, M and a half, N and a half, O, R1, R2, and T. Okay. That is all of the SMC codes. That
And
starting,
now you can all understand why I invited Kerry to explain those things.
yeah. So you don't really need to understand the law, but it helps you get a better grip on when we say SMCL or SMCR1. That's what we're referencing there, is that particular section in the statute. The first one is S, and that one is just a slight step above 100%. On the opposite end of that spectrum is R2 or SMCT. Both of those, SMCT pays at the R2 rate, and that is 10,000 some odd dollars a month. That is the maximum. There's a lot in between there, and it's hard to get to that R2. We consider it a pretty good win to get to R1. Okay, and a lot of times R1 is as high as we can get, not all the time. So, what does it take to get to those various levels? So, let's start with SMCS because that's the easiest one to understand. SMCS is two ways to get it. It's called a housebound rating. You'll hear reference to that throughout VA and interacting with other vets. But there's two ways to get it. Like I said, you can be 100% and literally confined to your home, all right, housebound. You rarely will, if ever, see an actual SMCS awarded on that basis. All right, because if you are truly housebound these days, odds are you're entitled to more than S. Almost 100% of the time, how you get to S is the other way to get there, and that is to have a single 100% disability rating for a particular disability, plus an additional 60% for something else. Like, and it can be a combined 60, it doesn't have to be a single 60, but the 100 has to be a single 100. So if you had 100% for heart disease and you had diabetes on top of it with a combination of neuropathy and everything that combined up to 60%, that 100 plus 60 gets you to SMCS automatically. And that is, I have a gnat in my face if you see me swiping. That will get you about $300-ish above the standard 100% rate. Okay. Most of you guys are way above that. All right. But just starting at the bottom so you understand it. The next one everybody hears about is L, and we'll say aid and attendance as well. Okay. Everybody thinks aid and attendance. Oh, I'm getting paid aid and attendance. Well, you're if you're getting regular aid and attendance, you're actually getting paid at SMCL. Okay, that's the rate, the SMC rate. There's a few ways to get to L. One of them is to be in need of aid and attendance of another person for the daily needs of living, bathing, showering, or bathing, feeding, dressing, that type of thing. All right, now you can be 100%, all right, for various things and simply need someone's help to the daily needs of living. You don't have to have loss of use of multiple extremities. Um, and get compensated at the aid and attendance rate. Uh, I'll give you an example. Another way to get to that same rate, remember SMCL, you get to L through aid and attendance by needing aid and attendance. So you get paid the L rate. If you had loss of use of both feet, okay, let's say that's your only disability. Say it's a combat wound, loss of use of both feet below the knee. Um, that's SMCL. All right. That's just another way to get to L, just like needing aid and attendance is another way to get to L. If you look up these sections in the statute at 38 U.S. Code 1114 subsection L, it'll list out the ways to get there. There's more than that, but that's the main ones that we see. Uh, Now, I talked about half steps, what's called the intermediate rates, L and a half. Well, how would that work? Well, let's put aside aid and attendance for a second, all right, and just talk about extremities, all right. If both legs below the knee, loss of use is an L. If one of those is above the knee, that's L and a half. Again, that's just one way to get to L and a half. Right? If both legs were above the knee, loss of use above the knee, there's what's called no natural knee action. All right, that's SMCM. Again, taking it one step further, if one leg was at the hip, okay, you can go up another half step. So you almost think of it like a stick man drawing a little angle. The further up to the hip or the shoulder, when we're talking about that upper extremities, the higher that rate goes because the more the more disability there is there. So that's where you see a lot of the intermediate rates, M and a half, L and a half, in. Um, I couldn't list you all of the things in the statute that go to every single step because there's a lot. All right, you could have loss of use of a foot, uh, an amputation disarticulated through the hip. The reason that's important is because you can't wear prosthesis. One eye and one ear, total deafness, total blindness. And you start getting into some wild combinations, and no one in the country could memorize. I mean, you could memorize it, but even I would have to look that up to figure out exactly which SMC rates some of those more complex combinations are. But we can boil it down to your situations a little bit easier. So in our cases, all right, in most of y'all's cases, our goal, especially if you have loss of use of your hands and your feet, which is as many of you do, and is obviously what IBM is going to progress into eventually. We want to get you to that R rating, R1, R2 if possible. I'll just eliminate SMCT. SMCT was formulated after the Iraq and Afghanistan war, um, for all the people coming back with severe traumatic brain injuries, very severe ones that had disabilities equivalent to what it would take to get to R1 or R2, but they didn't have the combinations that you needed to get there. In other words, their disability was severe in terms of needing somebody's help, but they didn't have the loss of use combinations as a prerequisite to get to the higher level. So they made SMCT, which pays at the R2 rate, right? But you have to have traumatic brain injury and all that. So we can put that one aside. But it's as far as its rates go, it's the same as R2. So when we talk about R1 or R2, we're talking about a higher level of aid and attendance. So you've got regular aid and attendance, which is paid at the L rate, which probably everyone on the call likely qualifies for, unless you're in the very early stages. But then you've got all the intermediate rates, but then you've got the higher rates of aid and attendance, talking about the R1 or R2. So how do you get to R1 or R2? Those are rather special, okay? Because the compensation is, you know, almost 10,000 a month for one, and just a little bit over 10,000 a month for the other. VA is not going to give that one away. You're gonna have to fight for that one most of the time, or or have some pretty good proof. So how do you get there? Well, you need to be at SMCO. Right? If you cannot get to O, you cannot get to R1 or R2. All right. And so how do you get to O? Well, in order to get to O most of the time, you need two separate rates between L and N. So think about that for a second. If loss use of both feet is an L, uh, and let me back up a little bit. Loss use of both hands. Let's say you didn't have loss use feet. Loss use both hands. That's an M, because they consider hands a little more disabling than the feet. Okay. But in order to get to O, you need two of those rates. So when we talk about loss use of all four extremities, the feet would get you L, the hands would get you M. All right, so when you have two of those rates between L and N, you go to O. If you're at O and you need aid and attendance, you go straight to R1. Even if the aid and attendance got you to the O, that is the one time you can use it twice. And let me preface that by saying, beneath that level, you can't use it twice. For example, if you need aid and attendance because you have loss of use of the feet, all right, you can't get aid and attendance, which is SMCL, and loss of use of the feet, which is SMCL, to give you two rates to get you to O. You can't do that. All right, that's using the same thing literally twice. Okay. So if it's the loss of use that's causing the aid and attendance, how should you be rated? Should you be rated based on aid and attendance, or should you be rated based on just SMCL for loss of use of the feet? Well, ideally, you want to be rated based on loss of use of the feet, because the aid and attendance, what VA will do a lot of times, we're talking about regular aid and attendance, one step above SMCS. It's about $1,000, $800, give or take, more than the 100% rate. They'll lump everything together and say, you need aid and attendance for all your service-connected disabilities. Well, if you have loss of use of the feet, you're going to get that same rate just based on that. Okay. What if you have a number of other conditions that's service-connected? That's not, we're not talking loss of use of the hands, but maybe a diabetes and a heart condition, or other joints that are, like, to talk about just IBM. You got ratings for your hands, ratings for your swallowing, but they're not loss of use. Okay. But your feet are loss of use. Well, you want to be compensated based on the loss of use, not based on aid and attendance, because at SMCL, for loss of use, those other disabilities may get you those half steps. All right. For example, I told you it takes a while to learn this. So you get L for loss of use of both feet, but your hands are rated 30% each. Okay. but not loss of use. All right. There's another subsection in that law that says if you have a separate 50% or more, you get a half step. So from L to L and a half. If you have a separate 100% or more, you get a full step. So from L to M. So and now there's case law to get it even more complicated. Use for decades, you could only get one half step or one full step. There's case law now that says you can get multiple half steps. Okay. So let's say you're 50% for each hand, but it's not loss of use, but your loss of use of the feet. All right, you get the L for the feet, you get L and a half for one hand, go to M for the other hand. So now you're at SMCM. That's more advantageous than lumping everything together and saying you need aid and attendance and just getting compensated at the L rate based on aid and attendance. Okay. So those are small little caveats. But my ultimate point is if you need aid and attendance because of the loss of use of, of one rate, you can't use that same aid and attendance to get to O. That's why we need two separate rates between L and N to get to O. Loss of use of the hands would be one, loss of use of the feet would be another. Now, and then once you're at the O, if all of that causes the need for aid and attendance, that's when you get to use it twice and go to R1. Okay. Let's talk about another combination where you can use aid and attendance also twice. Uh, Loss use of the feet, again, it's a good baseline. It's SMCL. But let's say because you're IBM, all right, everything else is so weak that even if you didn't have the loss of use of the feet, your hands are so weak, but not quite loss of use, along with, all the other muscles getting so weak that you can't use your extremities enough to tend to the wants of nature, to bathe yourself, to keep yourself free of harm. And based on everything but the feet, okay, let's take the feet out of the picture for a second. You need aid and attendance, or would need aid and attendance for all that stuff, not taking into consideration the loss of use of the feet. Now you have, again, two separate rates. Loss of use of the feet, one, and everything else still causing the need for aid and attendance, even when you don't consider the feet. That would be two rates between L and N, it would be two L's. That would take you to O. One of those rates is the actual aid and attendance, so you go to R1.
Kerry,
So that's
allow me to interrupt here if I may, and I
yeah,
apologize.
yeah.
But are those rates depicted on the VA website when we sign into our account and we look at our claims and our disability status? Is that is that uh, uh, is that displayed anywhere? I don't remember ever seeing that
If
on mine.
if you go just to VA's website, put VA compensation rates in there, you can pull up all the compensation rates. What you want are special monthly compensation rates, and it will list S, L and a half, M and a half, just like it lists 10, 20, 30, 40 on the normal rate chart. It will list all of them for SMC as well. You just
And that
want
would be for each individual.
each
Like if I sign
individual
in
rate.
for no, I'm talking about if I sign into my account, will
Uh-huh.
it show what SMC rate I'm receiving?
It should. Here's the thing. I don't know what you guys have access to on your account. I don't see
Um,
what you see. Uh,
okay.
I mean, it should. I don't know how it lists it. It's going to tell you, I'm assuming it tells you your compensation, the amount of it. What you can, now, if it doesn't tell you and you want to find out, you can go look at the amount of compensation and match that up to the pay charts and see which one it is.
Okay.
Uh, but I don't know what exactly you guys see when you log into your accounts. I would surely to God think that they would at least tell you what rate you're under.
Uh, has anybody else seen that on if they've checked on their own? their own payment. I know they provide payment history, but I haven't seen any designation of. I know that I'm at SMCL, and I certainly need daily care. I can't function any longer without help. But I haven't seen any indication of that. Uh, so that's what I was asking, if there was someplace within the bowels
Where
of the VA website, can you find those
where
things?
where we see it, okay, when we look at a claims file, put it that way, rather than their system, all right, we see it on the code sheet for a rating decision. All right, so it well, like when if we send you a copy of your rating decision along with the code sheet, go in the back of that rating decision, look at the code sheet, and it will tell you what rate you're being paid under there. That's where we look. That's what we use.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
and that's what has to be accurate, because if it's not accurate there, it's not going to be accurate in your bank account every month. Uh, so
Okay. Thank you.
right. So that's kind of how all the SMC works. But that is, I would not be giving you all the information if we did talk about one of the major ways to get to all of those rates, and that is loss of use. Okay. You hear me talk about loss of use of the feet, loss of use of the hands. Uh, what does it take to get to a loss of use rating? Because when we come down to fighting these individual claims, that's what we end up having. Once your IBM is service connected, all right, and you have severe mobility issues, uh, and we're trying to get to that R1 or R2 rating, the first thing we have to look at is, can we establish loss of use for any of the extremities, and if so, how many? Okay. Loss of use is defined a little differently for hand and foot. Okay. And the reason it has to be deemed loss of use, because, a foot can be rated 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, depending on the condition, depending on the severity, but not loss of use. A major hand can be rated 60, 70, 80, but not loss of use. You're only going to get those SMCs when we're talking about multiple loss of use. Otherwise, you're just stuck in a combined rating that's going to get you probably to 100%, but it may not get you above that. All right. Maybe it might get you to regular aid and attendance, but it might not get you above that. So we need to establish the loss of use. Uh, for a foot, let me back up a little bit. VA, if you see any of their DBQs, they'll have a question about this. They'll basically say loss of use is effective remaining function equal to that which would be served by an amputation with a prosthesis. Now, I'm not quoting word for word, but that's pretty close. So no effective function remaining other than that which would be equally well served with prosthesis, amputation with prosthesis. So what does that mean? That's what they ask the examiners. And that's one of the definitions. That's just part of it, though, of what loss of use generally is. Well, if you're talking about a foot, and say you have drop foot, so you have nerve damage in your spine and one foot just completely drops. That's supposed to be loss of use for that foot. Drop foot is supposed to be loss of use. Uh, if you could function equally well or better with a prosthesis, all right, that should be loss of use there. Today's prosthesis, you can probably function pretty good. Uh, Here's the rub, though, that when they ask the examiners these questions, the examiner has no idea what loss of use is defined as. They read that question and go, well, who would want an amputation when you don't have to get one? You'd be amazed how many times that question is answered no when the vet is sitting there in a wheelchair and can't get out. If you're in a wheelchair, you should be rated for loss of use, period. And that's because of the rest of the definition for loss of use. It's clarified for a foot when there's no longer an ability to balance and propel with that foot, or with the hand grasp and manipulate. Okay. Now, if you can manage to get on your feet and somebody can hold you and you can stay there, all right, and that's it. And VA says you don't have loss of use. You can stand up. I would say one, that's not effective remaining function because there's a definition for that, and that's not balanced and propelling. All right, and so we have to get into all of this stuff when we're arguing for loss of use. For the hand, if you can't hold a toothbrush, okay, if you can't shave, you can't hold eating utensils, if you can't make a fist, all right, odds are you have loss of use there. Uh, but as many of you are finding out the hard way, that is simply not coming through very well on a lot of these examination templates. You know, Jim can tell you, it is sometimes a nightmare trying to get the proper examination to show the actual remaining use of extremities because it may be in the hand when they're looking at the whole arm. And you don't have to necessarily have complete loss of use of the arm as if it were paralyzed. And obviously that would be loss of use, but it doesn't, you could just lose the ability to grasp and manipulate with your hand, and that is loss of use. Okay. But very few of the examination templates, even the ALS that we try to get them to do, doesn't explain that very well when it comes to something like the hands. I think it's the muscles or the nerves, maybe. It's actually, we almost always get a muscles and a nerves exam. If and there's a hand and fingers examination template, which I like to see those simply because if your IBM is to the point where you can't use your hands, uh, it tests the strength of your hands. And what we'll see a lot of times is, and I don't have the strength chart in front of me, but it might say 1 of 5 or 2 of 5. Well, 2 of 5, and I may not be 100% accurate here. 2 of 5 is basically no movement against gravity. Okay, if you can't use your extremities even against gravity, okay, in my estimation, there's a solid argument for loss of use there because you can't grasp and manipulate objects in your world if you can't even move your hand against gravity. Okay, so those are things I look for in some of these exams because if they just go off that question, is there effective remaining function other than which would be equally well served with an amputation, the examiner is going to mark no. And that first line rater is going to go, oh, nope, no loss of use. They mark no on that. And that's as far as they're going to look. And then we're going to be in a DRO conference trying to explain to the DRO, you got to look at the individual extremity. It's certainly if the guy's got 1 or 0 out of 5, 0 of 5 is like no muscle movement, not even your muscles don't even twitch. The joint don't move. That's basically paralysis. 1 out of 5 is muscle movement. So they might be able to somehow induce muscle contraction, but the joint doesn't move. There's not enough strength there. Right? That's certainly loss of use to me, whether you talk about the hand or the foot. So that's, as this has evolved, that's kind of what I look for now, because you just can't rely on these examiners to answer because they don't. Now, if they would teach this to the examiners, uh, and the examiners really knew how, we probably wouldn't have this problem. But uh, that's that's a discussion with somebody in central office that's probably not going to listen. But anyway, so understand that that's what we shoot for is that loss of use. And sometimes it can be elusive. Sometimes other cases it's a little more clear. When you're at that 3 of 5 strength, that's when it is really on the border. We're not 100% certain if we can get loss of use. It might come down in those cases to the rater or to other evidence in the file. It can be somewhat complicated at that point. Uh, but that is essentially it. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Kerry,
Have
allow me
I
to.
thoroughly confused everyone?
Well, yeah, you're close. You're getting close to confusing everyone. Um, but um, I and I don't mean to get into my own personal situation, but I know that this applies to a lot of us here. Is that I was rated separately because of the diagnostic codes, because of the schedule of reading disabilities is absent a specific diagnostic code for inclusion body myositis. They
Mhm.
lump us into to myositis, and that is noted as to the examiner that they should be examined for degenerative arthritis. That is what happened to me twice.
Yeah.
Um, that finger is rated at a 10% disability because of IBM. This finger is rated at 10%. This elbow is rated at like 20%. It is the most ridiculous compilation of rating. So as a result, I have 33 separate disabilities.
And let me, if we can get them to concede the loss of use, it will probably be one code, not all those codes.
Yeah, but
The rate,
as a result, I don't have 100. I'm at 100%. I'm actually at like 600% disability
yeah,
rating, but not one of them is rated at 100% individually.
yeah.
Is that something that I can correct?
No, that's something we are actively trying to correct. All right, just
Okay,
understand that is, no, I'm fully aware of what you're talking about.
okay.
I can't discuss your case in a
I
public.
and I understand, but
Uh,
I know those
but
separate compiling of disabilities
but we
affects a
see
lot of us.
that in tons and tons of cases. And here's one of the reasons behind that is because you hit it on kind of the nail on the head. They don't have something individually for IBM,
Right.
but they have myositis. Okay,
It's a very broad term.
right, right. And so when they look that up to in their manuals, put it that way, to determine what examination to give somebody, it tells them to give a joints exam.
Yes.
When you're talking about to a first line rater, an adjudicator, somebody that's just develops, orders exams. I've done it. All right, I blew in the face trying to explain the disability, and it's like talking to a stump. They can't get and they won't get past the fact that my book says joints exam. That's what I have to do. and we
Yeah.
and we have to let that go through and file an HLR, get a conference, and explain to the DRO, who will then come back usually and try to order a proper exam. And even that gets messed up sometimes. But
Kerry,
that
some time ago, you and Matt, I believe, and possibly others were involved in a conversation with the hierarchy at the Veterans Administration in order to establish that. And I think we were talking to the Undersecretary of Benefits that you had a conversation with. Is that something that we should consider resurrecting and attempting another go at that contact?
that's a possibility. It depends on what the target is, so to speak.
Well, there's
Because
two. Allow me to. I mean, we as a group here, we have two goals, and our primary goal is number one is this would all be eliminated if, as you are well aware, and I will tell everybody here that Kerry has been instrumental in getting the VA to begin to start to open their eyes to the nexus of ALS and IBM. And there's a couple of us now that have I haven't, but there's a few of us within this group that have received their disability based on that similarity. And Kerry has been, as I said, Kerry has been instrumental in getting that far. But the two objectives we need is number one is to get Title 38 3.318 to add inclusion body myositis. That is the ultimate goal, is to get ALS and IBM treated as the same level of disability. The opposite goal, or not opposite, but the secondary goal is to get the schedule of rating disabilities to establish a diagnostic code for inclusion body myositis. And that is, I think, Kerry, you better than anybody would understand how many problems that would alleviate if we had a diagnostic code for IBM and a specific DBQ, disability benefits questionnaire for IBM, and a protocol established for the examiner. That would eliminate an enormous amount of these kinds of issues. So those two things: number one, to get the Title 38 3.318 to add inclusion body myositis in the wording, and the other one is to add a specific diagnostic code in the schedule of rating disabilities, which is in Title 38. I think it's Part 4, to get that established with the protocols for a proper exam. If we could get somebody to listen to us, because right now, how long have we been doing this? We've been searching this now for 5 and 10 years, and we can't even get anybody to listen to us. And that's why I wanted to see if we could possibly, open that door again.
Well, the reason I said it depends on what your target is. Obviously, the heaviest lift is the statutory change, getting the presumption. Um, well, or the regulatory change if they do it through a regulation. Uh, but even getting the rating schedule changed, that requires a regulation change. Um, and so that too is not now I wouldn't say it requires the same kind of regulation change that a presumption is. But the reason I'm saying all this is the lowest, in my opinion, the lowest hanging fruit is getting the condition evaluated correctly um, once it's service connected. All right. I gotta believe we could accomplish that goal, or at least potentially accomplish it without a regulation change, because you don't need a regulation change to create the right DBQ for inclusion body myositis.
Okay.
You don't need a regulation change to get training out to the field if that's what it takes, or to even centralize IBM cases to a group of people that is familiar with the disability and knows how to evaluate it. I mean, there are a number of things you could do internally that don't require regulation change. There are codes perfectly adequate to rate the condition, like the loss of use, uh, without even needing one specifically for IBM, although I think we should have one for IBM, don't get me wrong. Um, but those codes are useless if the people that use them aren't trained on how to get up to that
Yeah.
level, or your
Yeah.
examination templates don't catch the functional limitation of the disease. So that part I think is easier. Um, there there is a gentleman, as as I understand it right now, that should be, and I don't know at what time this year. I intend to find out, but I know it hasn't happened yet. Assuming the role of the director of compensation service. Uh, that is not that is a couple of steps down from the undersecretary. Um, but that position is in charge of everything DBQ, that's the policy shop. That I was the policy chief in that shop. The director was my boss. The guy that was there might be going back there. is a good friend of mine. Um, and so if he gets in there, that might give us a good avenue to approach this at that level. Now, if it's a regulation change to the rating schedule, right, that would start with the policy shop there. Now, it would eventually have to go above the policy shop, but it would start there. The presumption, I think, would have to start above all that. That would have to probably undersecretary or even secretary. Uh, but just because that's gonna be a money issue, so that's gonna be beyond just straight up policy. But just making a code or making a proper DBQ template, that's all within their power if they'll do it. My hope is he's gonna get that position, and my hope then is that he'll sit down with us and uh, at least explore some of these avenues.
That would be tremendously helpful, and we would exploit your friendship with this guy to the ends of the earth if you can knock on his door and get your foot in the door and advance this in some way, because the importance of this I don't think can be understated. I mean, it can be
Well,
not be overstated. It's
I,
something
I'm
that
I'm all for exploiting Augie's friendship with the secretary as well. So I can sit down. I'll sit down with him too if I can get that meeting.
well, we have hope there, uh, and not to open that door right now, but we're working on that and other things. But um, uh, again, what department was that you referenced there? Was the what
The
you said
the,
was the shop was
the direct compensation service but it's the director of compensation service.
Director of Compensation Services, and that is the group or individual that controls the DBQs and the diagnostic codes.
Right.
Wonderful. All right, Kerry, this has been phenomenal. We have a couple of questions coming up, I see. So let me acknowledge that. Kevin, uh, how are things in Hawaii?
Augie did want me to address some DIC stuff too, so I can do that. That's fairly.
Okay, yeah, he's got his hand up. Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention this is kind of a. I had this problem with Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic uses the reverse scale of 0 to 5, where 0 is normally in a normal medical center, 0 would be bad, but at Mayo, 0 is good. So if you ever go to Mayo and you get a 0 to 5 rating on a muscle, it's just the opposite of what the normal medical community uses. So I pointed out because I had that problem. Um, and I don't know if that's all Mayo campuses or just the Rochester campus, but that's what I was told was Mayo uses the reverse of that 0 to 5. Also, I'd like to suggest maybe is it possible for TMA, one of the medical advisory board members of TMA, to do a Zoom call with all these rating decision officers and maybe possibly inform them about myositis and to advance their knowledge so they'll be able to better evaluate claims.
I would tell you that's going to be next to impossible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know they go out to campuses for doctors to teach them about myositis. So I just thought maybe doing it throughout the VA on a Zoom call would help out. But just a
Yeah, that
suggestion.
that would that would have to come from somebody like director of compensation or I mean, they're not going to let their raters stop for that. Now, that doesn't mean that, the compensation staff does a lot of things: quality assurance, training, policy, legislation. Uh, if they would be the staff that could put policy together on training people how to rate this better. So we could potentially approach that as well.
Yeah,
And they could put it out to all the raters, but whether they want, well, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't want to get too optimistic on what they would do, but
right.
they would have the authority.
Yeah. One last question. Unique situation. Getting rated R1 on the benefit side, does that become a precedence for a decision on the health admin side, like your PCAFC program? Is that kind of an automatic thing, or is that
It's
going to be
not
a
automatic. But I tell you, I would, if you're rated R1 and they won't award you the caregiver benefit, I'd like to know about it because we'd like to appeal that. I mean, it should be hand in hand. That you should not get a denial and
Yeah.
caregiver uh, if you're rated R1. But
Okay.
it's not an autumn. It's one
Yeah.
doesn't mean they must grant the
Right.
other, but I
Yeah.
mean, it means you certainly qualify.
And that's my case. I've got the R1 over the period of the application of the PCFC, which is over 4 years now, and I'm still denied. So that's my case. So hopefully it'll get resolved. But you think if you're entitled to R1, you're
We
entitled to.
intend for it to be.
Okay. All right, Kerry. Thanks very much. Nice
Okay.
talking to you. Okay.
Augie, good morning from the western slope of Colorado, and how are things in Georgia?
Oh, good morning. We've had a very mild August here, and um, we can't complain about that at all. Um, Good morning, Kerry. It's good to see you again.
You too, Augie.
And as I mentioned to you the other day, that there's a little bit on past meetings, we've had a little bit of confusion about survivorship benefits that may apply to those of us that are receiving disability compensation from the VA. And I was wondering if you could go into clearing up some of that and supply us with some facts.
Sure. So the main benefit that your spouses are going to want to be seeking is DIC, dependency and indemnity compensation. Um, there's could say death compensation for short, but also death pension. You don't want to qualify for the death pension. That is for non-service connected deaths and is income limited. Uh, if somebody does qualify, by all means use it, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about compensation and a service connected death. So if you got IBM that's service connected now, uh, and you're in advanced stages and that IBM causes you to pass away, then your spouse is going to want to file for DIC. Now that's on a form 21-534. Because the death would clearly be related to the inclusion body myositis in a case like that, the DIC is basically an automatic grant. Right? If they deny DIC on something like that, bells and whistles should be going off because that is a completely illegal denial. Um, and what you want to make sure of is that the IBM is listed on the death certificate
Hmm.
that's service connected, just to make things easier. Uh, and then they will award DIC to the surviving spouse. Now, depending on, there's a couple of different rates she could get. She could get the basic rate, which is about $16.50 a month at the moment. If you've been married for 8 years and you've been 100% or more for 8 years, then there's an extra amount. It's about an additional 350, so bring the total to about 2,000 a month. Um, and so that's just the straightforward type of situation. But
Mhm.
a lot of them aren't straightforward. Say you don't have service connection, okay, but you're fighting for service connection, and you haven't gotten it yet, and you end up passing away. Um, and the IBM was the cause for service connection or the cause of your passing. At that point, a surviving spouse is going, one, it's the same form, 21-534, but it's more for accrued benefits as well as DIC. Accrued benefits, the same form does it all, okay? Uh, she wants to file for substitution. Again, that same form will do that. That's where she gets substituted in as the claimant on the claim that the veteran had pending when he passed. So she's now becomes the substitute claimant. She wants accrued benefits, again, same form. Uh, And those are benefits that would have been due to the veteran had the VA awarded the benefits that he was seeking. And then the DIC, also same form, which is the monthly benefit for the widow every single month, rest of her life, which is what we just discussed earlier. That happens a lot, okay? And in that situation, the widow gets to keep, or the surviving spouse gets to keep fighting that claim on behalf of the veteran. And any back pay that would have went to the veteran would go to the surviving spouse. And then at that point, they should have no problem of granting DIC once the IBM becomes service connected. Now, a little bit further, let's say you are 100% for something else. Say you're a Vietnam vet and you have Agent Orange related disabilities. And IBM is not service connected. Okay. But you are 100% nonetheless. And the IBM causes your death. And at that point, it would not be a service connected death. Now, the spouse can still fight that accrued claim as a substitute claimant. But if you're 100% for 10 years or more, it doesn't matter if that IBM was the cause of death or you walk out and get hit by a truck. The widow's going to get DIC automatically if you're 100% for 10 years or more. Okay, so there are multiple ways, all right, to get the DIC, which is again the spouse's monthly benefit. But if that claim was pending when that veteran died, then that surviving spouse is going to want to file for substitution, which can be the same form. There's also a substitution form which you can use, just easier to use the one that is catch-all, the 534. And she's going to fight that claim to get those accrued benefits as well as the DIC. And that's important because if that claim's been going on a long time, and let's just say she wins and they service connect IBM for accrued purposes, and say it's been pending for 5 years and they rate 100%. She could come back and say, no, I want aid and attendance. I want R1 because this is how severe my spouse was. So she can still fight for that maximum rating. It's not going to change what she gets in monthly DIC benefits, but it would change the amount she gets in back pay.
Okay.
So,
all right. The fly in the ointment that I see is that the death certificate has got to attribute the death as a result of IBM. Now, the chances are that for probably most of us on this call, one of the ancillary problems that go along with IBM is what's going to take us out, like respiratory failure or a fall that causes a brain bleed or choking or something like that,
right.
or aspiration pneumonia. So does it then incumbent on the surviving spouse to make sure that IBM is listed on that death certificate, or does she even have that ability?
I've seen plenty of people get, the primary cause of death and tons of contributing causes of death listed on their death certificate. Usually, I think and I've seen tons of people get a death certificate amended. Now, if nobody says anything and the doctor just, they may just put one thing because they don't know. They don't realize the impact the death certificate have. The more things is listed as a contributory cause, the better, in my opinion. Because somebody way back when wrote a policy that said if your service-connected condition, any service-connected condition, is listed on the death certificate as the primary or contributory cause of death, stop the train and award DIC. Because what VA had a habit of doing was, let's get a medical opinion to see what caused, and you would come out with these negative opinions on service-connected deaths when the death certificate itself listed a service-connected condition as a primary or contributory cause of death. There's no reason those things needed to be denied. They should have been automatic grants. So, you know, that policy is now solidified. So that's why it's important. You know, it does, even if it's not IBM, uh, you know, if there are multiple service-connected conditions, uh,
Yeah.
one needs to be on the death certificate.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you're going to lose the case. All right, you could
Right.
still win with a medical opinion but you know that becomes a longer fight, and all of that. It just makes things easier if it's on the death certificate.
One of the
Okay.
things that I'll add here is this is a very timely conversation. Coincidentally, um, I am planning within the next month or maybe 2 months to center our Zoom meeting around that very topic about what happens when a veteran dies. And it is the hardest time for a surviving spouse to uh, to proceed in of course of all the administrative details and so on and so forth. So what I was going to do is I'm going to put together a sort of a checklist, and that is what happens. Okay, when the veteran passes away, I'll supply phone numbers. Who do you call? How do you get the ball rolling? And get all some information. You got into a lot of detail, Kerry, which we're very grateful for. That opens our eyes to a lot of things that perhaps many of us, including myself, were not aware of. But I know that I've heard the importance of having the cause of death of being something that is service connected, especially in our case of inclusion body myositis. We have, as Augie stated, we have the uh, uh, aspirational pneumonia, we have the diaphragmatic paralysis, all of which are respiratory issues that can stem from this. So, but the first things first, and that is, what does the spouse do? And there is a division within the VA. It's called, I think it's decedent support or something similar to that. And I'm going to put together, so that's going to be coming up next month. And we can uh, look at the general uh, procedures that a surviving spouse would have to be aware of. And not to get too far off the subject here, but um, this is something that I've had a lot of experience in in dealing with these matters, not necessarily with the VA, but as many of you are aware, my background is in finance and investments, and I had many times had to deal with a surviving spouse of what to do. Okay, what do I do with this? How do I get this done? How do I get that done? And we would walk them through it step by step. It is no different with the VA. There are certain procedures that have to be initiated, and I'm going to put together a checklist of doing so. It would be a good idea if you haven't done it, is to make a checklist for your spouse or your family to know where your assets lie. If they're in a trust, if they are in a TOD, what we call TOD accounts, transfer upon death, um, uh, all of those things are important. I have made a spreadsheet telling my family exactly where all of the assets are. The VA is down there with the VA phone number, and that has to be called. Social Security has to be called. Your financial institutions, your banks, your investment firms, so on and so forth. Make a list of all of those. Put your account number, put the contact number down, and say, hey, if something happens to me, here is where the assets lie, and here's what you have to do. That is what I want to do for the VA side of things. Is here's the phone number you have to call. Here's what has to be initiated. So carry your uh, your information here was timely and very important, and it's a so I may be tapping you on the shoulder next month too, but uh, so it was something that we all should be aware of, and it's a very important topic. Augie, thank you for bringing that up because it's something that we all need to be aware of.
And
Dan,
can I add something real quick?
certainly.
If any, when or if you happen to be going through the situation with as a surviving spouse, the people that handle surviving spouse claims, it's called the PMC, the Pension Management Center. They are terrible. Okay. Now I'm giving you some information that, you know, your IBM is service connected. It's listed on a death certificate. There should be no reason your spouse does not get benefits. But my God, do they make some stupid mistakes? So just because you get something from them, that if it doesn't pass the smell test for you, get somebody to look at it, because it very well could be wrong.
Which translates into the fact that you do not need to pass a test to work for the VA. And you know, we have all experienced that with our claims process. So I think that is a that is a tidal wave that has swept into those surviving benefits there too. But Kerry, thanks for bringing that up. Dan, you have been very patient, and I thank you for your patience. What can we help you with?
Not a problem. Good to see Kerry here. I know he has thousands of packages there, but I've had one that's rather extensive because my wife was assigned primary caregiver for me because of having all the activities of daily living back in March of 22. But thanks to you and your group, I didn't know anything about that program until I heard it on this venue. So I applied for it, and right away it was accepted. And I get, you know, she gets her stipend for taking care of me, because without her, I wouldn't be existing, that's for sure. But, you know, the thing is, you know, I applied for back in 2010, the IBM, which was disapproved. Of course, that back then I applied, you know, I applied because of, you know, the Agent Orange. I got ischemic heart disease, which got me at 60%. And then I got a total of 80% service connection. But when I had the 60% and I think it's more than 70% total, I was able to apply for the unemployability. So ever since that was in February of 2011, I was able to get the 100% disability pay. And then by this group again, I found out about Terry Baker and his group and applied with them. But right now, you know, it's been about a year, I think, that this thing's been in the hands of a single lawyer for review. I, I don't know how in the world a single lawyer can spend that much time. I mean, I know my neurologist said I'm pretty much in the quadriplegia stage, because I'm like many, no fists, you know, very little use of the hands, no steps on on these legs. But so I don't know. I don't know. Do you have any idea, Kerry, of maybe how long those are taking, or am I one of the first to go through a single lawyer? Normally it's through a board.
I'm assuming, and I don't have anybody's specific info in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're talking the Board of Veterans Appeals.
Yes. Yes.
You know, they are a hard one to read. It wasn't long ago that your average case there took like 3 years.
Wow.
And that was the fast lane. I'm not, you know, now if it's expedited based on hardship, which we try to do.
And age. I'm 80 now. So,
Okay, well then okay, if you're 75 or older, they expedite it automatically. We don't even have to ask them. It should not take a year. Yeah, you might want to shoot me a message and we'll look into that. But now you know, not everybody works on expedited cases. We do see some occasionally that just for whatever reason, it's just not moving. But if it's an expedite, it should be moving. It shouldn't take a year. So yeah, that's something I'd want to look into. Um, but here lately, your average case now, if we do a direct review, which we try to always do these on direct review at the board, um, they've been returning them this year at least uh, on cases that we filed no more than a year ago on non-expedites, uh, which is a big change from just this time last year. Um, we're not sure why that is, if that's going to continue. Uh, we've heard rumors the board has broken its algorithm on how to figure out what cases come first. And maybe with the exception of certain cases, and maybe that's these cases. I'm hopefully to God they fixed it by now, because that was a number of months ago that I heard that. Um, but they're kind of all over the board with they've got 3 different docket lanes in the AMA. They've still got tons of legacy cases, um, and the legacy cases are all over the place. But if it's an age expedite, it should not really be taking no more than 4 to 6 months, I'd say at the longest. So if it's taking longer than that, uh, yeah, that's something I'd want to look into.
Yeah, because basically I had talked with Danielle there,
Yeah,
and I got a call back. I think it was a Rebecca or something like that, saying that yeah, it's still in the process, and we don't have any follow-up procedures. But I'll just stand by on that. But reference the DIC also, because I was 100% disabled from February 2011. My wife has been, we've been married for 20, 24 years. So she now automatically qualifies for
right,
DIC because
right,
of that, whether it's service connected or not.
right, right. Once
Yeah,
you're 100% 10 years or more, it makes no
yeah.
difference whatsoever what the cause of death is. She's going to get DIC automatically.
Thank you,
We
sir.
have covered we have covered a tremendous amount of fine detail. Kerry has provided us with just some things that make your head spin, and uh, it's always that question: is how in the name of God can an individual understand what Kerry just explained to us? Without the help of an attorney, it's almost impossible. And the VA has complicated matters over the years to where you need the help from people like Kerry and from Hill and Pontin. Um, and we are closing out of our time here. We got about 5 minutes left, but I wanted to bring everybody up to speed here on a development that is hopeful. And that development is that I had been contacted by Dr. Todd Cohen from the University of North Carolina. We are all familiar with the letter that he wrote on behalf of IBM veterans. And um, Dr. Cohen sent me an email asking uh, about access to data at the VA. He was familiar with the fact that I obtained a Freedom of Information Act response, and that was several years ago. And we got the number of cases, and from that I developed that epidemiology report. I submitted another Freedom of Information Act request a couple of weeks ago, and it has been nightmarish dealing with the VA Health Administration, wanting to know, well, what did I want? What time frame did you want? I said, just give me what you have. That's and that has now been close to a month, and they're dragging their feet. We're going to get that rectified. But in the conversation, now Dr. Cohen has assembled a group of scientists throughout the country to look into what contaminants are causing or likely to have caused us developing inclusion body myositis. He's working with a group out of there's our neurological research center in Arizona that is reportedly to be the world's largest and most comprehensive. We've got one of the scientists there. We've got another scientist at the University of North Carolina, and they said they have identified certain chemicals that are, and he put it in uppercase letters, very um, problematic. And I don't know what those are. We're gonna find out, but it has been something that uh, uh, he has taken the bull by the horns, and he is doing the research on this thing that we have been hoping for many years. They're going directly after what is the most likely cause of these what they refer to as the aryl hydrocarbons developing inclusion body myositis, with, of course, Agent Orange and the 2,3,7,8 tetrachlorodibenzoparadioxin, and that's a 27 syllable word that I didn't know we had. But at any rate, there's a lot of nasty stuff out there, and they are looking into it. I know that I contributed to him. I made a contribution to his lab, and that money is needed to progress things like this kind of research. If anybody is interested in doing that, I can provide the details of the lab and any contribution. Believe me, they were. Dr. Cohen was very, very pleased, very appreciative of the help for any kind of funding for the lab. He has tried to get funding through TMA, but has been denied. And sadly, he is the one that is most directly involved with the research pertaining to inclusion body myositis. So I would encourage, if anybody can uh, uh, make a contribution to the lab, I think it's going to go very, very far. And with that said, before we close out here, we have Mr. Terry Baker from Grand Junction, Colorado, waiting in the wings here. Terry, how are you this morning?
You. I have a question, somewhat off subject for Kerry. A friend of mine that I met online here is a vet. He's been diagnosed with IBM, but he can't get registered with the VA system. They tell him he's making too much money and they won't register him. Is that right? That just sounds hokey to me.
That now I'm making some assumptions here. It sounds like he may just be trying to get health care and have never been in the system before, and he's outside the means
Yes.
threshold. Uh, and so that could be, but now that doesn't stop him. That won't stop him from filing a claim to Service Connect to IBM. If he Service Connects to IBM, they have no choice but to let him in at that point. I don't know what the current status of healthcare eligibility is for somebody that's never been in the system that's above the threshold. I thought everybody could get in, even if they end up having to pay a copay, but I suppose I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure. But if he's got the IBM, I would absolutely encourage him to file a claim for it, for service connection, because that would change everything at that point.
Yeah. He says he's not making anywhere near as much money as they attribute to him, and he doesn't know where that number came from.
To file a claim, it don't matter what he's making. There's no income limit period to file a claim for service connection. So that's why it sounds like. Now, if he's filing for pension, or if they're taking the claim
He wants service connection.
Huh?
He wants the service connection.
yeah, then, if they interpret it as a claim for pension, yeah, they're going to tell them you make too much money because it don't take very much money to make too much for pension. But that's because pension is a different program. Uh, Compensation, there's no income limit at all there. But it sounds like he may be talking about healthcare.
He
Uh,
is.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'd have
Um,
Terry, put him in, give him my contact information. We'll help him start a claim.
okay. Yeah, I've talked to him about it till I'm blue in the face, and he's just real angry and frustrated with the whole
I
system
don't
right
blame
now.
him, but we
Yeah.
can help him file the claim. We'll get him started.
Okay, I'll pass it on. Thank you,
Uh,
gentlemen.
one last question, and this is Kerry. There have been a couple of veterans here that have asked me, and I do not know the answer to this, of what is the possibility of filing a class action suit for IBM veterans to further our goals, such as getting the diagnostic code or whatever. I I know that's kind of a long shot, but I figured you're here, and I'm asking this on behalf of the other veterans. Is what is your response to that question?
I I'm not sure how one would go about doing that. I mean, the Veterans Court now has class action authority, uh, but I don't see how a group like this or any group that's not been before the court in some way could bypass the normal judicial avenues to do a class. It's like we haven't had, like, for example, we haven't had to take a single IBM case yet to federal court. Now, I hope we don't, but I won't be surprised at all if we get a denial at some point from the board. And then we'd end up in federal court at that point on that case. Um, I don't know the mechanism you would get a group like that to because the court has to accept the class and they can say no, you don't qualify and all that. I'm not a class action expert. There are ones out there. I could talk to Matt but I just don't know. Uh, if the board was denying these cases uh, for you know for a group of the same reasons. Uh, I'd say that that would raise the possibility. Right now, they're not. Uh, so just to create a class or to file a class, just to get them to add it as a presumption, I don't know that that vehicle would get you to where you want to go.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, it's just a question that had been brought up to me. And I said, I said, Kerry's going to be on our Zoom meeting here. I said, we'll present this question to Kerry when he shows up. So here we are. And I know there's no magic wand, and I know that it's got to be an incredibly complex undertaking. And but for whatever purpose, uh, it'd be nice if you could wave that magic wand of yours and get that all remedied. But
I would trust me. I would love to.
as we all would. We are at the end of our allotted time frame here, so we're going to conclude today's Zoom meeting. And I am. Let me find out how to. There we go. We're going to stop the recording here too. Uh, I thank everybody for being here today. God bless you all. Kerry, endless thanks for your help and your input and your information. It has been magnificently valuable, and we're so very greatly appreciative of you being here and helping us clarify some of these items. So again, thank you,
It's my honor.
and I'll look forward to getting my case resolved here as quickly as possible.
I
It's been 2 years now since even the appeal.
it's been too long, and I
I'm listen,
we will get their head out of their butt
I've
one way
waited
or
eight
the
years.
other.
I've waited 8 years. I can wait another year. It's the hash marks on my arm that are mounting up. But with that, again, Thank you all. Kerry, again, thank you. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of the day.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks,
Gary.
Terry.
Hold
See ya.
Bye.